You asked the question, would we as a nation impose a similar ban on white Australians coming from England? Can you elaborate on your thinking and as articulated in that piece today?
Well, again, judging by the reaction of a lot of people to their piece, they are dead set against people coming back from a place like India. They don't seem to understand why people would even go to India in the first place. It's like a hellhole, something bizarre that you would do, a sort of betrayal of Australia. I don't know that those factors would apply if people were coming from visiting relatives, sick relatives, going to a funeral in England or something like that. So I do think the politicians may not be doing this for racist motives, but they're allowed to get away with it because I think in part racism, as well as fear and ignorance and all those other things that you've mentioned. I just think it's so shameful. It would have been so inspiring for us to do an airlift of Australian citizens stuck in India, brought to Christmas Island or maybe even a tent camp out in the Northern Territory for quarantining, just to rescue everyone. I heard just 5 minutes ago, Kieran, the Health Minister, Greg Hunt, said, we have a sacred duty to protect Australia. Not quite. We have a sacred duty to protect Australians, the people of Australia. And for the Indian Australians stuck in India, unable to escape, unable to come home to a decent healthcare system here if they're ill, I think is a shame on this country.
You wrote today as well, reminded the government and authorities that, I'll quote this piece that says, in fact, these are Australian citizens. They had to renounce their Indian citizenship to become Australians. Australia is their only country and it has a duty of care towards them. So in your mind, this duty of care is now being breached and breached quite terribly, leaving them stranded.
Absolutely. Look, I'm not suggesting we bring home Indian tourists and students and all that. I'm saying Australian citizens who happen, in many cases, to have been born in India. And the thing is, you cannot hold a dual citizenship with India. There's a lot of people who seem to think, these are people just, citizenship shopping, holding their Indian citizenship in one hand if it suits them and then playing, flashing around the Australian passport if it all gets too tough. That's not the case. You have to renounce your Indian citizenship before becoming Australian. This is their only country now. And it is our duty. In fact, it says in the passport, it is our duty to help Australians in trouble overseas. And what we're now saying with this ban is if you happen to get sick in India, an Australian citizen, take your chances with their hospitals, which we have seen are running out of even things like oxygen, let alone medicines, when we could treat them more capably here. We could save their lives here. I just think this is a terrible stain that betrays how panicked we are with fear. I'm not saying bring them and let them loose in the streets. We have medical facilities that should be able to cope with it. And I think we're just letting people in the lurch, and I cannot help but think the fact that they're Indian born is a factor in this, and shame on us.
What's your, just finally, Andrew, before you go, what's your sense of, so there are 600,000 Australians of Indian heritage and ancestry. Do you think, well, obviously it won't go down well with those loved ones and so on of people stuck there, but more broadly, is it an issue that will resonate negatively among that cohort?
Kieran, you know that I've been really critical in the past of people playing the race card. You know that. I hate it, and I hate the division and the tribalism of Australia. But here I have heard Indian voices thinking, saying, why us? Why is this happening? We are Australians. The Indian Australian community, I don't like the word community, Indian Australians have been one of the great success stories of our multiculturalism. They are people who have assimilated quite well. Their crime rate is below that of almost any other community. They have put in, they have made a go of this new country, they have enriched us. But we're now letting them think, we're now implying that somehow they still don't quite belong. that if they're in trouble overseas, if they're in trouble in India, we will not rescue them. It's every man for himself then. They chose to go there, tough luck. They're not Australians. We have no duty to them. I think that is so sad, and the effects of that could last for a long, long time.
Andrew, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Pleasure.